Hi, my name is Andrea. Welcome to the 1860 Lighthouse. I'm a volunteer here. I give tours during the tourist season, and I'd like to take you through the house and show you some of the interesting things to see. When guests first enter the lighthouse, they are first enter the vestibule. And we have signs in every room that describe what the rooms are, what the purpose of the room is, and what it was. Here in the vestibule, you can see there are doors here and around the room, and this would have been where we keep the doors closed. The reason in earlier times, the reason that the doors were closed is because the furnace or the stove is beyond this door in the dining area, and if warm air were to come into this area, it could rise up through the stairway and fog the lens in the tower. So as part of a general rule, the lightkeepers kept these doors closed to avoid that happening. This was also a place where the public would be greeted. If there were, because this is a government owned building and a service back in the day when it was an active lighthouse, when the public wanted to come and tour the lighthouse, they could. And this is where they would be greeted by the lightkeeper and his or her family. Here in the vestibule, we also have depictions of our earlier lighthouses as well as the current lighthouse. So starting out in 1849, there was, on this same piece of land, there was an earlier lighthouse that was a separate cabin and tower. It was only in operation for about 10 years, and it was not built very well, or it wasn't built to last, and so upon inspection it was determined that it needed to be replaced. So in 1860, our current lighthouse, where we are right now, was built on the same piece of land with a tower that's incorporated into the building. So directly above us is where the lens and the tower exist. So within these walls, there are structural beams that go right down to the base of the building in the basement and support. They go all the way up to the tower, supporting the weight of the tower and the lens. Also in 1889, it became evident that we needed a lighthouse on a pier out in the lake to help guide boats into the harbor. Prior to that, this lighthouse, because we're on land, we're up on a hill, we're not down by the lake, we were more of a kind of like a sign on the highway that tells you, like a mile marker. So as boats would go by, they would know they're passing Port Washington because they would see the lighthouse that we're in right now. But like I said, in 1889, there was more traffic on the lake coming into Port Washington, and so it was necessary to put a lighthouse on a pier out in the lake. That lighthouse is no longer existing. In 1935, when the Wisconsin Electric Power Plant was built on our south shore, it was necessary to reconfigure the harbor to allow coal boats to come into the harbor. So the 1889 lighthouse was removed. The harbor was reconstructed to allow for that boat traffic, and our 1935 lighthouse was constructed, which exists now. So that's out on a pier currently. So this is the lightkeeper's bedroom. Oftentimes, because the lightkeeper would need to be up multiple times during the night to refresh the lantern oil, he or she would sleep here to avoid waking up the family. The quilt that's hanging on the wall is a friendship quilt, and this was donated to the Historical Society some years ago. It was made by sisters who lived in a nearby community called Lake Church, Wisconsin. And when they would have family or friends come and visit, they the family and friends would sign or put their initials on a piece of fabric. And then the sisters, in turn, took those pieces and assembled them into this kind of a collection of quilt pieces to honor their friends and family. So you can see here, it was made in 1902, and you can see the signatures and floral motifs. There's a little bird down here that's kind of cute. I like to point it out, and especially if there are children on the tour, they enjoy seeing this. People's initials. We have way at the top in the upper left quadrant or portion is George Washington in honor of our founding father. He didn't visit here, but they put a signature in for him. Next, we'll go into the parlor. So this is where the family would spend time with family, friends, visitors to the light station, and it was typically, just a relaxing place. They may have played games here, talked, listened to music. We have a talking machine, which is something that is of local historical importance that I'll talk about also. And also I'll point out some photos of the family that was here for the longest time. So this is the called a talking machine. It was the cabinet was made by the Wisconsin Chair Factory, which was a local business, started in the 1800s, and then they were in business through the mid 1900s, and they built obviously chairs, wooden furniture, and also cabinets for this type of record, what we now would call a record player. And it was done as a joint venture with Paramount Records. So Paramount would do the insert of the record playing operation or mechanism, and Wisconsin Chair Factory built the cabinets. We do play this from time to time during the tours. The crank, it's spring driven, so this is the needle here. It rests like that. To start it, we use this lever and then gently place the needle down. Carefully lift it and put it back into its resting place. And turn it off that way. Over on this piece of furniture, we have photographs of one of the longest standing employees and residents of this light station. So Charles Lewis Sr. and his wife Maria came from out east in 1874. He was appointed lightkeeper. He only lived until 1880, and then his wife took over the operation as a lightkeeper for a short time while they sent word for their son, Charles Jr., to come and take his father's place. So Charles Lewis Jr. was lightkeeper from 1880 until 1924. So by 1924, this wasn't necessarily an active lighthouse any longer, but it was a residence, and Charles had the responsibility of maintaining it and keeping it up to standards. He married a local young lady, Linda Teed, and they lived here for all of that time. He's the longest lasting or the longest employed lightkeeper here at the light station. They had children and grandchildren, so the last photo is of Charles Lewis Jr. and his granddaughters, Jeanette and Genevieve. They lived here at the light station with their grandparents in the early 1920s. During the renovation of this building in the early 2000s, Jeanette was still alive, and she helped the Historical Society by using her memories of what it was like. And so the furniture and the structure of the house, the way that it's decorated, is was very much influenced by her memories. Also, she donated 2 paintings which were done by her aunt, and they are on the wall on the east side of this room. They are original paintings, and this is where they hung back in the 1920s. Now we'll go into the sunroom. This is the sunroom. In the 1930s, the Coast Guard, the U.S. Coast Guard, took over operation of many of the lighthouses, and so when they occupied this building, this used to be the outside wall, but they squared it off and made a little sunroom, so they would have had a nice view of the lake, beautiful sunrises, and so this is another area that we use to display items. Sometimes we have items here to sell, like t-shirts, hats, pins, various things like that. Now we'll go into the dining room next. So this is the dining room. The family would obviously have had their meals here. There's also a stove. It's not original to the building, but it is representing what would have been used to heat the entire house. We also, if you look at the ceiling in this room and also in the parlor where we just were, you can see vents that would allow warm air from here to float up into the upper stories. In this room, we have a monitor mounted to the wall, and this will show, when it's turned on, a slideshow of photos taken during the restoration of this building, which was in the early 2000s. In the telephone stand, there's the top drawer. This is where the control is, and we also have instructions for how to turn on the monitor. So first is the on button. Then once the screen becomes active and goes through its initialization, then we press the center button and the enter. Then we press enter again, and then right arrow and enter again. And the slideshow will begin. Through this door is what used to be the pantry. So the family would use this as storage. There was a root cellar for root vegetables, potatoes and such. Now it's our restroom. Now we'll come into the kitchen. So this room is interesting in many ways. The brick wall here is a remnant from the original cabin that once stood here as the earlier lighthouse keeper residence. And so this is really the only thing that remains from that earlier structure. Here we have a stove. This is not original to the building, but it is similar to what they would have used in the early days. And through that door on the east wall, the stove in the summertime would have been carried out to a summer kitchen, so to avoid having the heat inside the building during the warm months. So the doorway here on this side of the kitchen leads to where the cistern is, You can see the outline on the ground and also some remainder of the bricks that were the cistern on the upper portion. And it's also our accessible ramp for coming in if one is not able to do the stairs. All right, from here we'll go upstairs. As we go up the stairs, please watch your head here. It's a little bit of a low clearance. And then also something I like to point out to our guests is that when the building was restored in the early 2000s by the Historical Society, they left these areas visible through plexiglass, so you can see the type of joinery that was used by the original people who built the structure. So kind of an interesting peek into history. Okay, I also like to point out to our guests these two photos. These are photos of the downtown taken from the south side of the city, so where the Wisconsin Electric Power Plant is now. This one, the panorama on the top, is prior to 1899, and it shows, you can see where in the marina area, what's now the marina, was a lot of industry, a lot of buildings. That's where the Wisconsin Chair Factory was. And in 1899, there was a fire that started in the, I believe, the varnishing operations at the chair factory. And this photo below shows the after, the results of the fire. So a good amount of the chair factory burned down, as well as other buildings in our downtown. The company did rebuild, and then they remained in business until I think the 1950s. At this point, we like to give a demonstration of what a lens does. So up in the tower, another couple of flights up, we have a 4th order Fresnel lens. And we have information on some of the paperwork here about lenses that you can read and share with the guests. Also, I like to do a demonstration of how a lens works. So with my phone, I can use the flashlight and shine a light without a lens, and the light coming from my phone is pretty dispersed, but if I put the lens in front of it, it will bend the light rays and focus them into a beam that will travel much farther. Now we come into the lightkeeper's office. So this is where all of the administrative tasks would have been performed by the lightkeeper. It was required that they communicate with their next highest in command, which would have been in Chicago, and reports about any incidents on the lake or in the harbor. They would communicate about if they needed additional supplies of any nature, and essentially just give reports. And this is a good place to be able to see the lake from. As it is right now, there are many trees and some buildings in the way, but this was a good point of view to have as a lightkeeper. On the wall, we have a collection of some of the past lightkeepers who were stationed here. Okay, so next we'll go upstairs. It's important that people are wearing the proper footwear, so no flip-flops, no sandals are okay as long as they have a heel strap. If people do not have proper footwear, they are welcome to leave their shoes on this level and then ascend the stairs barefoot. Also, to go any further in the tour, the guests must have signed the waiver upon entry in the lighthouse. Also, any children who are 40 inches and taller are welcome to ascend to the tower. But under 40 inches, we ask that they stay on this level or on the main level. Also, when ascending and descending the stairways from here on up, we ask that you treat it like a ladder, so always facing the risers. And there are plenty of things to hang on to. I like to hold on to the risers as I go up and down. Also, there are handrails and handrails up further that you can grab onto. So we'll go upstairs. So this is the lamp cleaning room, and this is where the lightkeeper would have polished the brass of the lantern, refilled fuel oil into the lantern, and when it was time to exchange it during the night. Here we have a display of some of the tools of the trade. So containers for fuel oil, some lantern examples, polishing equipment, and the like. The light for this cabinet is right around the corner here. There's a switch right here. The door here just leads to our HVAC system, so that's not part of the tour. So this is the tower. It's got an interesting story itself. In the 1930s, when the Coast Guard took over operation of the lighthouses, this was no longer used as an active lighthouse, so they removed the tower and the original lens. No, we don't know what happened to it, but during the renovation of the building in the early 2000s, there was a visit to this area by some dignitaries from Luxembourg. And so in Port Washington and the surrounding communities, there's a large percentage of descendants of immigrants from Luxembourg. And they found out about the renovation project and that we didn't have a tower on the building. And so as a recognition of our kinship with the country of Luxembourg, as well as a thank you to the American GIs for liberating the country during World War II, they offered to construct this tower, and it was installed, I believe, in 2002. A few years later, the Historical Society had a replica 4th order Fresnel lens made. This lens is made with acrylic pieces. It would have originally been made out of crystal and would have been much heavier. It is heavy, but this is all a replica. This tower is a gift to us. Now, as a volunteer lighthouse keeper, I'd like to show you the apartment where you'll be staying. Okay, over in this area we have a living room, sitting area, beautiful views of the harbor, of the downtown, very comfortable area. From here we can go into the kitchen. fully appointed, lots of storage. So this is, you can feel free to visit any of the restaurants downtown or prepare your own meals here. This is the back stairway through here, and also, so this goes down the back way into the parlor where the portraits of the family were displayed. And here's the sunroom. So this is directly above the sunroom that we were in the lower level. So beautiful place to have morning coffee. Next, we'll check out the bedrooms. We have 2 bedrooms. Let's start with the one back here. There are some closets for storage, and first bedroom, nice big space. Bedroom. Okay, and last but not least, the restroom. It has a stand-up shower. I'd like to thank you for coming along on this educational tour. I hope you enjoy your stay here, and thank you very much for helping us to guide our guests through the 1860 Lighthouse.